Welcome to the deep dive. You send us your sources, we dig in and pull out the key insights. It's your shortcut to getting really well informed.
Hmm.
So today we're tackling Marlon Brando's autobiography, Songs My Mother Taught Me, using the material you shared.
Yeah, and this is, it's more than just a standard celebrity memoir, wouldn't you say? It's Brando reflecting on his own life in his own words.
Exactly.
So our goal here, our mission, is to really unpack those early experiences, the people who shaped him, how his views changed over time, and, maybe uncover a few surprises.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start right at the beginning. Early life, family influences. That first memory he shares is incredibly sensory, isn't it?
It really is. Waking up, seeing his governess Ermi asleep.
Right, and then going downstairs, that mouse-colored light, the
Hey.
tree dropping those winged pods.
Like dragonfly wings, yeah. And just watching them spiral down, waiting for the sun. It's such a quiet, almost internal moment he chooses.
What does that tell you, picking that specific memory?
Well, I think it points to a real sensitivity, even as a very young child. A sensitivity to detail, to the world around him. Something that probably, fed into his acting later on. It wasn't some big dramatic event.
Just a feeling.
Just a feeling, exactly. A moment of pure, kind of childlike awareness. Makes you wonder about his inner life back then.
Then you get this picture of his parents. Very different people, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. Chalk and cheese, almost. His mother, Dorothy. He links her to his instinct, his love of music.
But also instability, right? Being brought home from bars.
Yeah, that's in there too. A difficult side. And then the father, Marlon Brando Sr., described as having this immense strength of endurance, but also
Pathologically stingy
Yeah.
and controlling.
And a temper. That San Francisco bar fight story. Not someone who showed much affection, apparently, except, oddly, to the dogs.
It sounds like a tough environment.
Yeah.
How would those two extremes shape a kid?
Well, you've got the artistic, maybe unpredictable mother and the rigid, emotionally distant father. It creates this push and pull. Franny, his sister, apparently said it was like having 4, 6, or 8 parents, depending on their father's mood.
Wow.
Yeah. So likely a really complex emotional landscape, maybe leads to being guarded, needing approval, but also maybe rebelling against it all.
Makes sense. And we see these little anchors he had, like a small pillow he called his talisman.
A need for security, right,
Ah.
in what maybe felt pretty insecure.
Yeah. And there's that sweet story of the first kiss with Carol, though he never knew what happened to her.
A fleeting moment.
And then a really powerful one saying a racial slur and Aisali's mother gently correcting him.
That one jumps out. A very early lesson, it seems, about the weight of words, about respect. These small things can stick with you.
Definitely. We also get these other flashes, a seizure after falling off a pony,
Yeah, quite scary.
and that sad memory of Wes Mickler with advanced TB, the golden cemetery for a smile. Heavy stuff.
It is. And through it all, he really stresses how important his sister Jocelyn was, how she basically raised them.
She sounds like the anchor,
Very much so. And then you have the lighter moments like the cow, Violet.
with the flowered hat from the rooster.
Exactly. It paints this picture, tenderness mixed with harsh reality. The siblings really relying on each other, it seems.
Okay, so moving on to his teen years. Shattuck Military Academy. This seems like a really defining period.
It does. And those letters home.
Right. He writes these letters saying everything's fine, full of love, but looking back, he calls it dishonest.
Masking loneliness, he says. Wanting affection he wasn't getting.
It's quite poignant, isn't it? Kids trying to protect their parents or maybe themselves.
It's a common thing, that facade.
Mm.
And his later realization shows him coming to terms with those suppressed feelings, I think.
But while he's writing these dutiful letters, he's also causing chaos.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't exactly blending in, the Vitalis prank, setting fire to it over a master's door.
Yikes. But the big one is the bell tower clapper.
The great unsolved mystery. It's quite a story. Climbing the tower, stealing this huge 150-pound clapper just to stop the ringing.
And then the cover-up, forming a fake committee, blaming his enemies.
That's audacious. And his rule, never take on a partner in vandalism. Says a lot, doesn't it? Independence, strategy, a bit of theatricality even.
Definitely creative mischief. But academically, not so much.
No, he admits he hated studying, actively avoided it, worried about dyslexia. He'd just drop classes.
Yet somehow he excelled on the crack squad drill team. Precision, discipline.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe he rebelled against that kind of structure, the academic kind,
Right.
but thrived where there was physical discipline, performance maybe.
Could be. And all through Shattuck, those letters just keep begging for connection. Which one of you died is heartbreaking.
Shows that deep need for parental attention. But interestingly, a colonel there saw something in him.
Despite the troublemaking.
Yeah, saw leadership potential, even mentioned the bell clapper thing.
Yeah.
And then Brando describes leading a group in the woods, making this quick, intuitive decision that worked.
So the rebel had flashes of leadership.
Seems like it. Maybe that independent streak wasn't just about breaking rules, but also thinking differently. An intuitive mind, perhaps, not suiting to textbooks.
After Shattuck, he does a complete 180 for the summer, rides the rails, hobo camps.
Yeah, it goes on the bum, as he puts it. A huge shift. And he discovers this whole subculture.
With its own rules, lingo, even secret chalk marks.
Right, symbols for danger or for finding help. Imagine that for a young guy from his background. A real eye-opener.
Must have been, plunging into a totally different world.
Absolutely. Learning about resilience, community, how people organize themselves outside the mainstream. Life stripped down to basics.
He mentions the mulligan stew, everyone chipping in.
That communal aspect.
And the informal hierarchy, the senior hobo leader. And that coffee pot. Just grounds dumped in.
Huh. Yeah, very basic. No frills. But it probably honed his observation skills, connecting with all sorts of people. Good training for an actor, in a way.
Good point. Okay, so then he heads to New York, early days there, trying to fit in.
Seems like it. He talks about trying to play conga drums in Harlem, feeling a bit out of place.
An outsider again?
Maybe. But he also talks about encountering Jewish culture there and how much it influenced him. He perceived Jewish women as more educated, more sophisticated.
Interesting observation. What do you think drew him to that?
Perhaps an openness to different ways of thinking. Maybe seeing intellectual and social avenues he hadn't known before. He seems curious, willing to learn.
But that curiosity runs into the harsh reality of Hollywood prejudice pretty quickly.
Oh, definitely. He talks about the anti-Semitism in casting back then. All those actors forced to change their names.
John Garfield, Paulette Goddard.
Edward G. Robinson, Paul Muni. And Stella Adler's story about her nose surgery still being called too Jewish. It's stark.
Yeah, a really ugly side of the industry he was entering. Speaking of Stella Adler, though, he revered her as a teacher.
Absolutely. He contrasts her approach sharply with Lee Strasberg's method acting, which he really didn't rate.
What was it about Adler's teaching?
She taught understanding your own emotional mechanics, he said. Finding the genuine emotion, being real, not just putting on an external show.
Not like those personality actors you mentioned.
Exactly. Or that George Bernard Shaw quote about character actors. Adler's focus on emotional truth, on the why behind the feeling, clearly resonated deeply with Brando's own sensitivities. Authenticity mattered.
And he talks about his own unwavering curiosity about people, always trying to figure out what made them tick.
Yeah, not just for acting, but just fascination.
Yeah.
Constantly observing, analyzing, doing the groundwork for understanding characters, really.
He shares some awkward early New York stories, too, that bizarre rehearsal advice.
Oh, the play with dignity, crotch padding thing. Yeah, unsettling.
And some flirtations that went nowhere. Just navigating those early social scenes, seems like.
Finding his feet. The awkwardness, the strange encounters. It's all part of it.
But Adler remained a huge influence, right? Teacher, emotional support. He even dated her daughter briefly.
Yeah, she was clearly pivotal. And then his career starts moving. Truckline Cafe. Short-lived, but taught him a lesson.
A cynical one. Nothing attracts women more than fame, money, and success. Ouch.
Huh. Pragmatic, maybe? A harsh dose of reality about fame, perhaps?
Then working with Guthrie McClintock and Catherine Cornell in Candida, his descriptions are vivid.
I mean, McClintock's hernia, Cornell's stage presence being like trying to bite a tomato seed.
Yeah, feeling like they were on a different beat. And Sir Cedric Hardwicke's single expression.
It gives you such a feel for that world, doesn't it? The personalities, the different styles. You see him figuring out his own approach amidst all that.
And then something quite unexpected, volunteering for the League for a Free Palestine.
Which turned out to be a front for the Irgun, the militant group.
What prompted that?
He says seeing films of the Nazi death camps being liberated just hit him incredibly hard. He felt Jews had to secure a homeland, decisively. So he gave money, helped fundraise.
Just a strong moral compass early on and a willingness to act on it.
Definitely. Deep empathy, a commitment to justice, even if it led him to controversial places. His activism wasn't just a later thing.
Then there's Tallulah Bankhead. Working with her sounds intense.
Larger than life, certainly. Her reputation, the drinking, the seduction attempts. He was quite young.
And he didn't approve. Letters home mention her decadence, her politics.
Yeah, a real clash. Shows him navigating these powerful personalities, forming his own judgments about the industry and the people in it.
Okay, fast forward to the big one, a streetcar named Desire. He lands the role. You can feel the excitement in that letter to his dad.
Oh, absolutely. The salary, second billing, Kazan directing. He calls it strong, violent, sincere, emotion over intellect. It's the breakthrough.
And he offers to help his dad financially, a sense of responsibility there, too.
Yeah, wanting to share the success. He also mentions Kazan's description of Tennessee Williams.
A man with no skin, so sensitive.
And self-destructive. Gives you context of the play's intensity, and then the play hits, huge success. That telegram from Boston.
Need Money by Tonight Show, splendid letter to follow Marlon. Classic.
Huh, yeah. Instant impact. Dizzying, probably.
But he pushes back strongly against the idea that he was Stanley Kowalski.
Very firmly. Says he was the opposite sensitive, where Stanley was crude, primal. He insists Stanley was a creation.
Why was that distinction so important, do you think?
It's about the craft, right? Proving he could transform, become someone else entirely.
Yeah.
And probably protecting himself, too. Not wanting to be defined solely by that one iconic, maybe misunderstood role.
He also had that interesting take on Jessica Tandy's Blanche.
Right, that her performance unintentionally made Stanley seem more sympathetic. Threw off the balance.
And the audience laughs sometimes.
Which apparently horrified Tandy. It shows how performance choices really shape how an audience sees things, doesn't it? That dynamic interplay.
Fascinating. But behind the scenes, success didn't fix everything. He talks about ongoing anxiety, depression.
Yeah, linking it back to his mother leaving, feeling worthless, deep-seated stuff.
And therapy didn't help initially, that Freudian analyst.
Bill Middleman. Brando found him cold, lacking empathy. It just goes to show, success doesn't erase inner struggles. And finding the right help isn't always easy.
It really humanizes him. He also mentions his bond with his sisters being scorched by the same upbringing.
That shared experience created a strong connection. But fame hit hard personally, the attention from women.
And the reckless behavior that followed, that window ledge incident.
Wow. Yeah. Alcohol, feeling invincible. It sounds like he was really struggling to cope with the sudden fame. Not healthy ways, maybe.
He shares other moments too, those nighttime motorcycle rides.
Thrill-seeking.
Maybe. And breakfast at Edna's fancy apartment, a contrast to his past. And that time he bled on stage in Streetcar.
And the audience thought it was makeup.
And then the hospital prank with Irene Selznick, a mischievous side too.
Yeah, it gives you a more rounded view. The intensity, but also this playful, maybe even provocative streak.
He seems quite cynical about Hollywood, though. The mythologizing of actors.
Very much so. Admits he did things for money, like the book itself. Talks about trust being difficult after fame, old friends exploiting him.
Disappointing. And that weird story about faking a religious conversion and tap dancing for wounded soldiers.
It's eccentric, isn't it? Maybe pushing back against expectations, or just a really unconventional way of trying to connect or entertain. Hard to say. A mix of cynicism and odd behavior.
Then the relationships. Marilyn Monroe, described as sensitive, perceptive, their last call.
A quiet moment amidst the chaos.
But then the contrast with Maria, intense, destructive.
Extreme behavior is harsh rejection.
Yeah, and Lisa, the phantom phone calls. Intelligent but delusional. His personal life seems full of these really intense connections, but also a lot of turmoil.
Definitely a pattern there. He admired Kazan as a director, though. Arch manipulator of actors' feelings, high praise coming from him. Yeah, recognizing Kazan's skill in getting those performances. But then Brando talks about his own acting approach changing.
After Last Tango in Paris, moving away from deep immersion.
Exactly, towards something more technical. That role was apparently incredibly draining, emotionally.
So self-preservation.
Probably. A need for more control, maybe.
Yeah.
Protecting himself from the constant emotional excavation. An evolution in his craft, looking for sustainability.
Okay, let's talk films. The Wild One. Huge cultural impact.
Massive. Unexpected, maybe? The leather jacket, the jeans, becoming symbols of rebellion.
And that line, "What do you got?" He felt the audience read defiance into it. Maybe more than the filmmakers intended.
Possibly. Art takes on its own life, right? But he said his rebel image wasn't about the jacket, it was about refusing to play the Hollywood publicity game.
With Hedda Hawker, Luella Parsons.
Right. He wanted honesty, not manufactured stories. Saw Hollywood as a business, plain and simple, not a place for icons.
Interesting. And his relationship with James Dean.
He saw Dean as kind of a younger brother figure, struggling with the same pressures, insecurities of fame.
Told him not to imitate him.
Yeah, be yourself. And he saw Dean's talent really growing by Giant. Felt his death was a huge loss. A real sense of connection there. Maybe protectiveness.
Shared experience. Then he forms his own company, Pennebaker Productions. Why?
A mix of reasons, sounds like.
Yeah.
Idealistic, make meaningful films. Practical, give his dad a job. Tax benefits.
Right. And he mentions again his early support for the Jewish community, the Irgun fundraising.
That early activism.
Yeah.
But then he talks about becoming disillusioned, scouting for the UN in Southeast Asia.
He's seen foreign aid used badly. Arrogance, corruption.
Exactly. His perspective is broadening, becoming more critical of institutions, global issues.
There's a funny story from filming Tea House of the August Moon in Japan.
Oh, Louise Kellhorn's funeral. The Catholic service.
With Glenn Ford's over-the-top eulogy and everyone else trying to kneel and stand at the right times.
And getting it wrong. Brando trying not to laugh. It's brilliantly awkward. A moment of pure farce amidst filmmaking.
Then a much heavier role, the Nazi officer in The Young Lions.
Christian Diestel. And his interpretation is fascinating. He wanted to show how people ignore the bad stuff to keep their own myths alive.
Rationalize.
Exactly. He connects it to parents justifying Vietnam deaths, the righteousness of leaders like Johnson, McNamara, even brings up the CIA's Operation Phoenix.
Wow. That's a dark read on the character, linking it directly to contemporary politics.
Yeah, very pointed. Shows him using his work to explore really complex, uncomfortable themes about ideology and self-deception.
Switching back to personal life, later years, his father remarries, has an affair.
And Brando finally confronts him, lets out years of resentment. Sounds like a huge, necessary confrontation.
And discovering his dad's secretiveness about money, hidden accounts, but eventually finding forgiveness.
Yeah, realizing he needed to forgive him. A long, tough process, it sounds like. The complexities of family never really go away, do they?
No. Then there's Tahiti, Tetiaroa. This becomes central.
Hugely important. A sanctuary. He initially wanted to help the Tahitians, but realized they had more to give him.
That first landing on the atoll sounds incredible. Dangerous, exhilarating.
The power of the waves. Feeling insignificant. It shifted his perspective, he says. Made him feel like a visitor, not an owner.
What was it about Tahiti that grabbed him so profoundly?
Peace, maybe. Escape from Hollywood's artificiality. A connection to something more elemental, more real. The descriptions of nature are so powerful, it seems humbling.
And he shares all sorts of stories from living there.
The infected insect bite, the unreliable plane, the cook's DDT incident.
Sleeping under the stars, thinking about the universe. The shark encounter.
It paints a picture of real immersion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Embracing the challenges and the beauty of remote island life.
We also get these snapshots of other experiences. Thai opera in Bangkok, getting drunk with JFK.
UNICEF work in India, seeing the caste system. Oakland during racial tensions after Bobby Hutton's shooting.
This shows the sheer breadth of his life, the different worlds he moved through.
Absolutely. Growing awareness of global issues, inequalities,
Ooh.
far beyond acting.
He looks back at his 60s films, some for money, some for friends, liked working with David Niven on Dead Time Story.
Appreciated Niven's humor. Learned about lighting from Yul Brynner, that awkward Godfather dinner with actors he couldn't understand. The Bet with Michael Caine, little glimpses behind the curtain, the camaraderie, the odd moments on set.
More personal stuff, too. The sonic boom, calling out Daryl Zanuck publicly.
Hearing about Charlie Chaplin's alleged abuse from Sidney Chaplin, the runaway son story with Arthur Penn, his lifelong issues with food, that dangerous diet, just adds more layers, doesn't it? The complexities, the dramas, the vulnerabilities behind the public face.
He wonders about his attraction to exotic, dark-skinned women, maybe linking it back to his governess, Ermey, and abandonment themes.
Self-reflection there.
Recounts the intruder incident, the volatile relationship with Wiona ending badly, admits his past temper with paparazzi.
Talks about therapy with Dr. Harrington helping, that near drowning while fishing with Native Americans. He's quite open about his flaws, his struggles, his journey towards understanding himself.
And then meeting Laurence Olivier and being deeply disappointed. Why?
He doesn't elaborate much, but it clearly had a big impact. Maybe the reality didn't match the legend.
Perhaps. But his passion for Native American rights becomes huge.
Absolutely. Outrage at broken treaties, reflecting on humanity's destructiveness. His involvement at Wounded Knee was significant.
Interacting with Dennis Banks, trying to find out what happened to Annamea Quash. What fueled that commitment, do you think?
Maybe his Tahiti experience opened his eyes more to indigenous struggles.
Mm.
A deep empathy, certainly. Anger at injustice. He used his platform.
Which connects to his view on acting awards, finding them inappropriate.
Yeah, given world problems and how Hollywood had portrayed Native Americans historically, which led to the Sasheen little feather moment at the Oscars.
Still talked about today. Bold move. He also talks about changing how he learned lines, focusing on meaning, improvising more.
Interesting shift. And that bizarre anecdote about doing a card trick for John Gotti.
Huh.
The circles he moved in. It shows that continued unconventional streak, using his platform in unexpected ways.
He reflects again on the toll of intense acting, the shift to technique. Filming Apocalypse Now sounds nightmarish.
Yeah, Coppola struggling, Brando trying to steer it through its heart of darkness, his difficult experience on A Dry White Season 2, and then finding meditation after experiencing Satori. A continued search, it seems, for meaning, for balance, for a sustainable way to live and work.
And finally, finding satisfaction in small things on Tetiaroa, watching sunsets in Tahiti, admiring their classless society living in the moment.
His views on good and evil evolving, questioning free will, realizing his philanthropy maybe wasn't always effective.
That emotional reaction to Dances with Wolves, feeling like a homecoming, and ultimately finding peace by forgiving his father and himself.
It feels like a culmination, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Bringing together Tahiti, his changing philosophy, self-assessment, and that final search for reconciliation. A long journey.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Songs My Mother Taught Me, we've seen this incredibly complex figure, shaped by family, rebellion, art, activism, and Tahiti.
Yeah, and some genuinely surprising moments jumped out. The bell clapper, the Urgen connection, the Oscars. But also the raw honesty about fame, relationships, his own flaws. It gives you a much richer, more human picture than just the icon.
And as you've listened along, maybe it makes you think about the influences in your own life, how your perspectives shift over time.
Which leads us to a final thought to leave you with.
Mm.
Considering Brando's journey, all that self-discovery, those changing views on human nature, what belief, maybe one you hold quite deeply, might you be prompted to re-examine in your own life? Something to mull over,